This is Good Neighbor Week in Beverly Hills, as it extends a hand of welcome from its 30,000 citizens to friends of surrounding communities, to the West, and to the world. During the next hour, you will hear in music and drama the story of a city and meet some of its most illustrious citizens, people who have played a vital role in the economic, cultural, and social advancement of a glamorous community. People who have written the Beverly Hills Story. And who could have been a better choice to act as host for the Beverly Hills Story than the son of its first honorary mayor? Here he is, Mr. Will Rogers, Jr.
Thank you, George Walsh. Quite a chore cut out for me, telling the story of a town like Beverly Hills. Of course, I'm going to have plenty of help. In fact, I've already got some help from the Chamber of Commerce out there. So, naturally, what I'm going to tell you about Beverly Hills will be mostly good. But the boys have been working pretty hard compiling a bunch of statistics, and let's have a look at some of them. Then we're going to get on with the show. Now, let's see. It says here that Beverly Hills covers an area of 5 square miles and has a total of 1,200 swimming pools. Believe me, that takes a lot of chlorine. There are more Cadillacs and foreign cars in Beverly Hills than any other city of comparable size in the country. There's more than one telephone per person. And Beverly Hills and playgrounds, 17 public tennis courts, 9 banks, a public library, 7 churches and temples, 4 elementary schools, and a wonderful high school. Say, that's true, too. I ought to know. I graduated from it. 28,000 trees, it says here. 96 miles of streets, all of them paved, and 38 miles of alleys, but only 59% of them are paved. We're going to have to get to work on that. Well, there's some of the statistics, but it looks as if they've kind of left the story up to me. Now, here's George Walsh, speaking for the First Federal Savings and Loan Association of Beverly Hills.
Thank you, Will. Ladies and gentlemen, this special broadcast is being presented for your pleasure by the First Federal Savings and Loan Association of Beverly Hills, in cooperation with the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce. This week, the mayor of Beverly Hills, George W. Davis, has proclaimed June 4th to June 11th as Good Neighbor Week. For 20 years now, First Federal Savings and Loan of Beverly Hills has been built on the Get Acquainted and Good Neighbor themes. The directors and staff of First Federal, all Beverly Hills citizens, have long taken a personal pride in this community. Working individually and collectively, they have been leaders in the development of social, civic, and cultural progress. And now back to Will Rogers, Jr. and the Beverly Hills Story.
I've been around Beverly Hills for quite a while, but seeing something grow and knowing just what brought it about are two different things. You can be sure it took a lot of faith, planning, and the work of many far-sighted people. So I decided that the first thing to do was to naturally talk to the mayor himself, Mr. George Davis. He has a sideline as president of the First Federal Savings and Loan Association out here. So I dropped over to his house and took a comfortable chair and kind of put the problem up to him.
Nice of you to drop over, Bill. What's on your mind?
Well, I didn't come for a loan this time, George. It's this Beverly Hills story that we're going to do for the folks. You've been part of that story for a good many years, about 25 if I remember right.
Yes, I came in 1929. Your dad was one of my first customers over at the Beverly Hills National Bank, you know, the Beasley Bank.
I remember the old Beasley Bank. And that's why I thought you could help me a little. You know, there's such an awful lot to tell, and I just don't know where to begin.
Just tell them the facts, Bill. Now, let's see. Beverly Hills has 1,200 swimming pools, 96 miles of paved streets, 28,000
Now, wait,
trees.
yeah, I know all those statistics. We've got more swimming pools than Bibles and all those kind of things, and of course I'm just as proud of it as you are. But, Mr. Mayor, what about the people? The ones who were here right in the beginning. Where am I going to find out about them?
Well, Bill, that's a little out of my line. After all, you're a newspaper man. Why don't you dig it up like any reporter would?
You mean just dig it up?
Why, sure, that's the idea. Knock on any door. But I'll tell you one thing. It started long before the time of Rudolph Valentino, Doug Fairbanks, Tom Mix, and all the rest of the movie stars.
So I started digging around the newspaper morgues and the libraries, and I started talking with the old-timers. And the story just kept going back and back and way back to the year 1769, when the first white man set foot on this land, riding along an Indian trail which is now known as Wilshire Boulevard. Soldiers and adventurers from Mexico, on fine horses and silver-mounted saddles, armed with long rifles and lances, and in the lead rode the Spanish governor of the Californias, Don Gaspar de Portola.
We will camp here for the night. Set up the standards there by the spring.
Excellency, our scouts report an Indian settlement just a short ride ahead.
Go to them at once. Have them know that there is to be no trouble. Andale.
At once, Excellency.
A good place for others who come this way. We will record it on the map as the spring of the alders of San Esteban.
In the years that followed came soldiers, priests, and colonists, and they set up presidios, missions, and towns throughout California. And then about the year 1822, a man named Vincent Villa, with his good wife, Maria Rita, stood by that spring of the alders of San Esteban, and with them was her cousin, Luciano, and there they planned for the future.
But so much land, Maria, so much land.
Good land, my husband, with plenty of grass and water for a fine herd of cattle.
Cattle, you say, Maria? And what cattle do we have? Nothing but a few cows that do not give enough milk for all your children.
Perhaps it is better than that you should return to Los Angeles, Luciano.
No, Maria. Perhaps Luciano is right. It would not be easy.
Nothing is easy. We have learned that with the years.
Then perhaps you will tell us how we are to get title to this land, way up to the mountains, as you say.
First, we must build our house and live here. The title will come in good time.
I will not stand here to argue with the tongue of a woman. These things are for a man to decide.
Then they must, Luciano, always be with us.
He is your kinsman, Maria.
As you say, my husband. But please, do not listen to him. I know you are not strong, but your pension from the army will help, and I will help too.
You are a good woman, Maria. But with so many children.
There will be more children, Vicente, and they will love this land as we do.
Very well. We will choose a good place to build our house and hope for what is to come.
And someday all the land will be ours.
Maria, a home and a rancho must have a good name.
I see. There is so much water here. Let us then call it El Rodeo de las Aguas.
El Rodeo de las Aguas, the gathering, the roundup of the waters. The meeting of the streams that in the rainy months rush down from Coldwater and Benedict and all the other canyons. Well, things didn't go too well for Maria, but she stayed on the land, thanks to her faith in the future, a faith that's carried down to this very day. A few short years later, Vincent died, leaving Maria with 11 children and the ill-tempered Luciano, but still no title to land.
So, Luciano, you choose to come back, huh?
I go where I please, woman. This rancho is much mine as yours.
And there is work to be done. Not all of it my work.
And for what purpose? We will never own this land. I come from Los Angeles, where I talked with citizen Vicente Sanchez.
I, too, have talked with the alcalde many times.
Such things are for a man, Maria. If you talk so much, tell me how there is any hope.
Hope is only for those who wish to do something about it. The alcalde is willing to grant us a title.
And did he tell you the law? No title can be given until there are 150 head of cattle on the land. You have 50 if you count them twice.
Perhaps I count on a greater power than you, Luciano.
And what does that mean?
Look to the east. Tell me what you see coming.
Why, there is cattle. More than enough.
See,
You had no money to buy them. Where are they from, Maria?
from the Mission San Gabriel. The good priest heard my prayers and sent them as a loan. God grant that we can pay for them in good time.
And they will be half mine. That also is the law.
As you say, Luciano. But soon El Rodeo de las Aguas will be ours.
And so, thanks to her strong faith, Maria and her kinsman were granted the land, which was recorded under the name San Antonio. They each had a small house, Maria stood somewhere on the northwest corner of what's now Sunset and Alpine Drive. It's near where the present Beverly Hills Hotel is. They had a few horses, 2 ditches, but very little water. But they owned the land. 4,500 acres of it. Still, that was not enough when one of the owners was Luciano.
Luciano! What have you done now?
Do you not have eyes to see, woman?
I see only your cattle at the spring. Again you drive mine away.
I run this rancho in my own way.
But there is no other water. My cattle will soon die. It is always the same when I plant my vines, you destroy them. You are rude to my children. You speak words to them that no one should hear.
Then keep them from me. Go back to your house where you belong.
I see you leave me no choice.
And what do you think you can do about it?
This day I will ride to Los Angeles. There the authorities will decide whether you or I will remain.
Maria won her case, and Luciano was ordered off the ranch. For his share of the land, Maria paid him the hearty sum of $17.50. Well, then came the year 1846. Commodore Stockton marched in at the head of his troops and hoisted the American flag over Los Angeles. Maria and her family fled their home, and her title was lost forever. But later she returned, and 3 years later, her claim to the ranch was confirmed by the United States. But then there were other dangers. In the following year, marauding Indians were on the warpath. The few ranch workers retreated to Maria's house, where the Indians laid siege for several hours. Helping load the rifles was a boy 9 years old.
Senora, you should not be at the window.
I have learned to handle a rifle, Benito. Keep back from the window.
Senora, are you all right?
Yes, my child. What would they want with an old woman such as me? Quick, now load the other gun.
Oh, see, why did they not take the horses and cattle and go away?
There are some who will never live in peace, Benito.
Senora, the powder is almost gone.
You are sure?
We've been firing for many hours. Soon there will be no ammunition left.
Aye, and that is what they are waiting for. If only there were a way to get word to the rancheros.
Senora, I will go.
Oh, no, Benito, you are but a child.
See, the Indians fire from beyond the sycamore tree. I will go by the back way and crawl along the water ditch.
Benito, if they see you...
Senora, when we cannot defend ourselves, what will we do?
I will bring help in time. Adios.
Benito! Merciful mother, quickly, fire to draw their attention from the ditch.
Si. Senora, they do not see him. Benito is quickly gone. Soon he will bring help.
Such courage for a boy. God grant that he be long remembered.
And that 9-year-old boy is remembered today. Remembered as part of our Beverly Hills story. Well, neighboring ranchers came to the rescue and finally surrounded the Indian band. Surrounded them, incidentally, near where the Beverly Hills Women's Club building now stands. Well, Senora Maria was getting old, and a short time later she sold her ranch to Benjamin D. Wilson, the famous Don Benito Wilson, and Henry Hancock, and they planned to convert it into a wheat ranch. They paid $500 in cash, gave notes amounting to $500, and the promise to pay $3,000 more when the United States title was confirmed. Now just think of that. $4,000 for all of Beverly Hills. My goodness, I hate to think what that land would bring today. Well, the last payment was made long after Maria's death. So that era was ended. But the spirit of Maria Rita lives on. Now let's listen to another word from George Walsh.
The First Federal Savings and Loan Association of Beverly Hills hopes you are enjoying this program dedicated to its founders, its citizens, and its leaders. Yesterday, a precedent was established in Beverly Hills. Starting at 9 a.m., everyone took it upon himself to visit a neighbor, to knock on any door. And to our neighbors in the surrounding communities who visit Beverly Hills during Good Neighbor Week, First Federal and the Chamber of Commerce have made arrangements for free and ample parking at the Sun Lumber Company lot opposite the City Hall, as well as for free tram service to spots and events of interest. The days will be filled with events, exhibits, fashion shows, stars in person, a baseball game between film stars and citizens, building dedications, and many others. Each day of the week, a world-famous entertainment star will be inducted as honorary mayor to serve for the day. Such notables as Captain Midnight, Charles Bickford, Art Linkletter, Jack Benny, and Hopalong Cassidy. Now our host of the Beverly Hills Story, Will Rogers, Jr.
Well, 100 years have passed since the days of Maria Rita. The plan to raise wheat failed and sheep herders drifted in. In 1869, a German colony formed a corporation and divided the ranch into farms and lots, where the center was reserved for a town to be called Santa Maria, but it soon died. Then came the boom of the 80s, and a stream train was running from Los Angeles to Santa Monica through the land, and there was a little station there called Morocco. By some twist of fate, we might be living in Morocco today. Imagine going to Morocco High. But then that boom busted. And finally, in 1906, the dream of a beautiful city found its final master plan. A corporation guided by Burton Green foresaw a city of fine homes and parks with broad avenues lined with palms and eucalyptus and pepper trees, and they gave it the name Beverly, after the Beverly Farms where Mr. Green had lived before he came west. In 1913, Margaret J. Anderson built the world-famous Beverly Hills Hotel, which just rose right out of the grain and wheat fields. By that time, the future of Beverly Hills was assured. And in 1919, Douglas Fairbanks built his fabulous Pickfair home, which naturally became a great social center. And then he was followed by the other greats of the motion picture world, Charlie Chaplin, Gloria Swanson, Conrad Nagel, Fred Niblo, many others. That was the gold plate era, and I'm sure there are others who can tell about it better than I. So I was on my way to see one of the most beloved citizens of Beverly Hills. She and her husband played a great part in the Beverly Hills Story, and she's grown graciously with the years. If I was to knock at any door, this would be the first one, the home of Mrs. Fred Niblo. Believe me, she had plenty to tell.
It's nice to see you again, Bill.
Well, it's a wonderful pleasure for me, Mrs. Niblo. You know, your husband was a great director, but I don't think so many people know that you were a great star in your own right. We all remember you best as Enid Bennett. Do you remember some of the old movies you were in?
Oh, gracious, it's so long ago I've absolutely forgotten them. But I do remember some of the good ones that Fred made.
What were those?
Oh, the early pictures with Douglas Fairbanks, Mark of Zorro and the Three Musketeers. Many pictures for Mr. Ince and others, and then leading up to his world-famous Ben-Hur.
Ben-Hur, that reminds me. Every time I go around, I see a lot of these old-time cowboys. Every cowboy claims that he one time drove a chariot in Ben-Hur. If everyone that claims they'd been in Ben-Hur had actually been in Ben-Hur, you'd have had 500 chariots in that race. I'd like to see that picture again. I'd like to see the Mark of Zorro and some of those old pictures. They really had action. But, Mrs. Niblo, I believe that you and your famous husband were one of the first people to come to Beverly Hills. Maybe you could tell us something about it when it was a bean field and all that.
Well, yes, that was in 1918. Early Beverly Hills. That thought brings back many memories to me, very happy ones, too. Fred and I bought our first home in Beverly soon after we were married. We were, I believe, almost the first people in motion pictures to settle in Beverly. Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks were there before us at Pickfair, and I believe Charlie Chaplin had bought a home near there.
Why did you happen to come to Beverly Hills?
Well, I'd seen it long ago when I first came out to make a picture. And I went on location to the old, what was then the Doheny Ranch. And we went on Beverly Drive, and I saw those palm trees, and I was sold. I wrote to Fred and said, when we were married, we're going to live in Beverly Hills.
Well, being a pioneer, you had quite a little trouble, didn't you? Especially trying to get groceries and establish a store?
Oh, yes, I should say so. Why, of course, then there was only one building in the village. It was the Peck Building, an old frame building where the Bank of America is now. We had no churches, stores, police, or fire departments. Of course, the lack of these things caused the early settlers with true pioneer spirit. These included Stanley Anderson, Sil Spaulding, Conrad Nagel, Fred, and others, to start a local grocery store. But believe me, they proved to be better businessmen and artists in their own field, so the grocery business soon went by the boards.
Of course, I remember your husband best, perhaps, as master of ceremonies at the Beverly Hills Chambers of Commerce meetings. He's very famous after-dinner speaker.
That's right. You and I were at many of those dinners. Fred was a very witty, extemporaneous speaker, and he was devoted to Beverly Hills, and he was much in demand in the capacity of master of ceremonies. The Chamber of Commerce of Beverly Hills was organized, and Fred was their master of ceremonies for many yearly banquets, which became quite famous as time went on, and Beverly Hills attracted more and more noted and interesting personalities. Of course, the inimitable Jack Benny is now carrying on in a wonderful way.
In a tradition established by Mr. Fred Niblo.
That's right.
Of course, many of these things you've been speaking of were before our family came to Beverly Hills. Do you remember when Dad came there?
Indeed, I do. Beverly Hills was to gain a citizen of rare quality, the one and only Will Rogers. His homespun humor, underlaid as it was with truth and wisdom, his warm humanity was soon to make him world famous. His newspaper column really made the whole country Beverly Hills conscious. I'll never forget the idea, which really started as a joke, to meet him at the train, give him the key to the city, and make him its honorary mayor. That called for a parade, which was really a parade.
Yeah, I was there, too. We'd been living in Beverly Hills for some 4 or 5 years, and Dad had been east all winter, so now he was coming home to be made honorary mayor of his adopted city. Everything was set, of course, for a real California welcome, except for the one thing that they couldn't control, the weather. As I remember, they built a platform in front of the Beverly Hills Hotel, and crowds were parked clear across Sunset and down into the park.
There he is! There's Will Rogers!
Will Rogers for mayor!
Will Rogers for mayor!
Heck with that. Will Rogers for president.
It took people to bring all this about, Mrs. Niblo. People like you and your husband who saw a future for the city that we know today.
It's been a wonderful life here, Will. And with all the planning that's going on, such wonderful events like the Good Neighbor Week we're celebrating, I'm sure that the finest days of Beverly Hills are yet to come.
Mrs. Niblo, you've certainly brought back to me some wonderful memories. I'm sure that all your neighbors and friends everywhere will join with me in wishing you many happy years to come.
Thank you very much.
Through the years, I'll take my place beside you, smiling through the years.
The Beverly Hills Story will continue in just a moment, transcribed over the CBS Radio Network. Back now to the Beverly Hills Story and our host, Will Rogers, Jr.
Well, now you remember, Mrs. Niblo mentioned someone as turning on the lights on Wilshire Boulevard, where it comes through Beverly Hills. Well, that's one of the most beautiful women of the silver screen, Miss Corinne Griffith. So naturally, she was next on my list. Unlike most of us here, while Beverly Hills was still a bean field, she had enough foresight to, I think it's all right, I could get a little mercenary maybe, but she had the foresight to buy some of these acres. And today, she is a very successful businesswoman. But she still has time to sit down and talk with old neighbors.
Well, Will, it's awfully nice to see you again, and I'm always glad to have you in my home, and I'd love to answer any questions about Beverly Hills.
Corinne, Mrs. Niblo just got through telling me how you turned on the first lights of Wilshire Boulevard. Was it the big, broad avenue then that it is today?
Well, yes, it was. I think that was one of the first publicity stunts to start me off in pictures. And I remember the street was just about as broad as it is now, but there were old-fashioned lights on it, and I know that we were pointed at, and I was given the signal, and I threw a switch, and way down in town, all the lights went on in Beverly Hills. There were a lot of bread wagons there at that time, the Helms Company, and they tooted their horns. We had quite a time. It was very lovely.
Maybe you can tell us, Corinne, how Beverly Hills got its worldwide reputation as the glamour capital.
there were many glamour stars here at that time. I remember Greta Garbo, seeing her walking around the streets in slacks, and she was glamorous even with slacks on. Clark Gable arrived shortly after that, and of course Clark is the glamour plus, as you know. Norma Shearer and Joan Crawford, I came out in October, then Norma arrived in March. I think Joan arrived in November. We all came from New York. And they were certainly glamorous girls and still are. They're the loveliest things around here. So we've still got glamour around here, you know.
You know, it just occurred to me, Corrine, you've been a very successful motion picture star, and now you're one of the country's outstanding businesswomen. Just between neighbors, do you prefer being a businesswoman or a film star?
Frankly, that reputation of being a good businesswoman is something that I love basking in that reflected glory, but I'm not really. It's all Beverly Hills, you know. Everything I've got's in Beverly Hills because Beverly Hills has given me everything I've got.
You know, Corrine, I think the folks would like to have you recall for us some of the pictures you made and some of the people you worked with and some of the incidents in them.
Well, the biggest, the greatest, most colossal, epic-making picture I made in silent pictures, the pictures I started in, was Divine Lady. That was the story of Emma Hamilton and Lord Nelson. Then, strangely enough, so few people seem to realize I made many talking pictures. My biggest talking picture was Lily Christine. It was made in London. And the wonderful thing about that was that the then Prince of Wales, the Duke of Windsor now, we gave it to him at his premiere for the premiere of the picture for his pet charity. I went to Paris to buy a gown. When I came back, I'm the one person that the immigration officers didn't want to let in because I had a new dress. And I tried to explain that I was to appear that night with the Prince of Wales, but they thought I was telling them an out-and-out story. So we had quite some time, and they had to call the prince's home, and the equerry had to allow me to get in. It was very exciting. Then after that was when I went broke, and I started out again then on a new career at $60 a week in summer stock and the stage. Then I did the stage for quite some time. Noel Coward loaned me his play Designed for Living, and I toured the country in that. Then I went to Washington and decided not to go on any longer in a career.
Well, Corrine, here's hoping you'll permit me to knock on your door again, and in the not-too-distant future.
I'd love to see you anytime, Will. That string is out.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Well, you know, folks, of course I plan to go up to Pickfair, too. That's where Mary Pickford still lives. Like Mrs. Fred Niblo and Corrine Griffith, Mary's given so much of her time to the cultural and social welfare of Beverly Hills. Mary's never been too busy to offer her help and her spirit in all of our community events. But unfortunately, Miss Pickford is on the high seas, bound for Europe right now. But in my mind's eye, I can still picture her as she made her inspiring appearance at the last Easter sunrise service in Hollywood. And as she read the Salute to the Dawn, people of all over the country were inspired by her wonderful voice.
Listen to the salutation of the dawn. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the realities and varieties of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Such is the salutation of the dawn.
That was the voice of Mary Pickford. I'll be back after this word from George Walsh.
Friends, we feel that with this, its first annual Good Neighbor Week, Beverly Hills has established a new concept in community celebrations. The city is actually holding open house, and the welcome mat is out for all the citizens of Beverly Hills neighbor communities. All events are free, including the fabulous tram ride, which takes you to famous points of interest, past the homes of movie stars, and to events as they are taking place. Once again, Will Rogers, Jr.
I got to thinking about a Texas boy who came off the range around 25 years ago and lived in Beverly Hills, and his name is John Bowles. He appeared in some of the early talkies and some of our finest musical comedy shows. I had a hard time finding him because he's been visiting his folks right now. He's in San Angelo, Texas, so of course I couldn't knock on his door. But I could ring some bells, and so I rang a telephone bell. And right now, John Bowles is waiting on the phone. Hello, John.
Bill, how are you, fellas? Wonderful to hear your voice.
Well, it's good to hear from you. You got any old memories here for them of Beverly Hills?
Well, Bill, let me start off by saying that I'm a Beverly Hills Texan. You see, I spend part of my time here in Texas and part in Beverly Hills.
Well, maybe that's the biggest kind of Texan.
It stretches quite a way, doesn't it? Well, in the early days, everybody that lived on the south side of Wilshire was on the wrong side of the tracks, and everybody lived north of Wilshire lived on the right side of the tracks. So it's very cute. Mrs. Bowles and I had just we were progressing fairly well. We were making enough money. We thought we could afford to move from Hollywood to Beverly Hills. So we had the pleasure of being with your father and mother one night, and Mrs. Bowles said, "Well, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Bowles, John and I are moving to Beverly Hills." He says, "Yes, John told me you were." She says, "Where are you going to live?" We said, "Well," Mrs. Bowles said, "Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Rogers, but we're going to live on the wrong side of the tracks." He said, "What do you mean wrong side of the tracks?" "Well, now you just wait. You watch my column tomorrow." So this is what Mr. Rogers had in his paper. Well, he says, "This is about the time of the year that the people south of Wilshire are happily renewing their rentals, and the people north of Wilshire are worrying about their mortgages."
Very good story, especially appropriate for those days.
Well, those are typical of your father as I knew him.
Yes, well, say, John Bowles, wasn't one of your first pictures Rio Rita?
Quite right. I did Rio Rita with a very delightful, charming lady by the name of Bibi Daniels.
Well, John, I thought it'd be very appropriate to let the neighbors here in Beverly Hills and over the radio hear some music from that picture. Would you mind?
I would love to hear it myself.
Well, all right, now, don't you hang up, because we're going to right now play Rio Rita.
Rio Rita, life is sweeter, Rita, when you are near. Rio Rita, life's completer, Rita, to have you here. From above is one day your lips will say I love you. Rio Rita, senorita, here is my heart.
Did you hear that, John?
Bill, that brings back a wonderful time in my life. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that picture. And may I say that it's been a great thrill to me to have been on this program with you. And I hope to be back in Beverly Hills shortly. After all, as I said, I'm a Beverly Hills Texan.
Well, John, we're looking forward to having you back here, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Of course, I knew this Beverly Hills story wouldn't be complete until I'd talked to two gentlemen who came west to make their homes in Beverly Hills almost 3 decades ago. And they've been a moving influence in the affairs of this community. To the citizens of Beverly Hills, they're known as Freeman, Gosden, and Charles Correll. But to millions of listeners all over the world, they're still known as just Amos and Andy. Friedman, there's a lot of places to live around here. How did you happen to pick Beverly Hills?
Well, Will, climatically, I guess it's as good a spot as you could find. You know, 9/10 of our work is done in our offices before we go to the studio, and we were able to find a very beautiful office in Beverly Hills, which is only about 2 minutes' drive from our homes. Incidentally, you might be interested to know that we have the offices that your father once occupied in the Bank of America building in Beverly Hills.
Gee, that's great. So you've got Dad's old office, huh? Well, that's wonderful.
Well, Will, to sum up the question you asked about why we selected Beverly Hills, I guess I could go on at great length about the advantages of the community. But I guess others on the program will tell that. I think we can sum it up, however, by quoting General Ralph Cousins, who was in charge of the Air Force at Santa Ana during the last war. Ralph said to me one day, he said, "Freeman, I have traveled all over the world, and I have spent a great deal of time in almost every country, but I have never found a better spot than Beverly Hills, California."
Well, Charlie, what brought you two out here originally? Was it the radio or the movies?
Well, originally we came out about 1922 to put on an amateur show for a convention here. We saw roses blooming in December. Later, we came back to make an Amos and Andy motion picture, and that's when the bug really bit us. Then it was just a question of waiting until the network had facilities here so we could broadcast our daily Amos and Andy show. I guess it's the best move we've ever made in our career.
Freeman, have you noticed many changes since you've moved to Beverly Hills?
Well, it's the old story, Will. We should have bought every piece of vacant property in sight. We have watched it build, we have watched the beautiful homes go up, and we've watched the big stores move in, the big hotels. Yes, there's been a lot of changes since we came here, and frankly, all for the best.
Well, boys, I will say that you're certainly a part of the Beverly Hills story. Charlie, how did Andy feel about it?
Well, I'll tell you, Will. As Andy would say, Miss Rogers, you want to know what I think of Beverly Hills? Ha, ha, ha. I love it.
Freeman, what did Amos and the Kingfish think about the old days here?
Well, I guess Amos would say, Kingfish, Miss Rogers here wants to know about the old days in Beverly Hills. Oh, you mean when we was out here making that moving picture called Check and Double Check? Yeah, that's it. You know, in that picture, we had a song that was a big hit. And every time I hear it, I think of the time that I fell in love with Beverly Hills. You know, the name of the song is called 3 Little Words. And them 3 words was, I love you. And that's the way our whole group felt about Beverly Hills. Well, why don't we play it now?
I think it's a good idea.
3 little, 3 little, 3 little, 3 little words. Oh, what I'd give for that wonderful, beautiful phrase. I want to hear not 1, not 2, but 3 little words. That's all I live for the rest of my days and nights. I must confess I've got a strange new feel in my heart. It tells me so sincerely, dear, and there are no other words that can tell it half so clearly. 3 little words, let me hear those 8 little letters. Say I-L-O-V-E-Y-O-U, I love you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, do you think we've got a story?
You certainly have. Will, you've covered a lot of territory.
Well, I think the best of the story is still to come, and that is for you to tell. What about the future?
That's up to all of us, Bill. and I am confident that Beverly Hills will continue to move ahead. Continuous effort is being made toward beautification, our parks, our streets, our schools.
Yes, and I know that you've always been a leader in that tree planting program. 28,000 trees, didn't you say?
Yes, all registered and cared for by the park department. Our program annually costs us $77,000. You see, one reason that property in Beverly Hills keeps its value is because of the continual cleanup, remodeling houses, keeping everything new so there will never be backward areas in Beverly Hills. Our city council is considering annexing the great Doheny estate now of some over 400 acres, and that will add 500 new homes. And by the way, those will not be ordinary homes. They will be beautiful, large homes on large lots. And this will be a residential section second to none in the world.
Well, now, what about this land that the city's buying across from the city hall, the old Barnaby development?
Well, that's one of the greatest projects for the future, Bill. The city voted $650,000 for that land, and we're looking forward to a recreation center there, a new library, perhaps a courthouse, maybe a hospital someday. We feel that it will make our civic center complete.
Well, now, what about this Good Neighbor Week? You plan to hold one again next year?
Every year, Bill. We're proud to show Beverly Hills to our neighbors, and we hope everyone will plan to be with us, at least in spirit.
Well, we can all understand your pride, George, in a city that builds for the future, just as Americans everywhere look to new horizons. Thanks, friends, for sharing this hour of celebration with us. Thanks also to the many citizens of Beverly Hills who participated in this program. And thanks especially to those in Beverly Hills who are continuing to build a greater city, building for a greater tomorrow.
The Beverly Hills Story, starring Will Rogers, Jr., was transcribed for you by the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce in cooperation with the First Federal Savings and Loan Association of that city. The script was written by Gomer Cool. Robert M. Hafter produced it and directed. This is George Walsh speaking.